Part of the reason why high school was not a terrible part of my life was because I didn't have a principal like this. Today's character talk is a Patreon request from Ultraman Verde, who wanted to hear my thoughts on Principal Abacus Cinch, headmistress of Crystal Prep Academy. This proved to be quite the challenge, as unlike the other characters I've tackled, Cinch has only been featured in one movie and nothing else, but it was a challenge I was willing to take. Now, some would say that Cinch falls on the lower end of the spectrum when compared to the rest of the MLP villains, but personally, I wouldn't compare her to them at all because I don't consider her to be on that level. When I look at characters that serve as an opposing force in a story, I look at it on a sliding scale. At the bottom, you have foils. These characters don't necessarily have bad intentions, but they do oppose the main character in some way. An example would be Sassy Saddles being a foil to Rarity in Canterlot Boutique, or Rarity and Applejack being foils to each other in Look Before You Sleep. Towards the middle, you have antagonists. Yes, not all antagonists in stories are the bad guys, but for the sake of this discussion, let's focus on the ones that are. These characters clearly aren't on the main character's side, but you wouldn't consider them to be villainous. At best, they're either crooks, jerks, or both. Characters like Suri Polo Mare, Diamond Tiara, Gilda, and Trixie fall under this category, although Trixie kinda straddles the line between this level and the next in Magic Duel. Then, towards the top of the scale, you have villains. These characters are the big baddies, the ones that have grand designs that go beyond ripping people off or being jerks to everyone. The ones that aim high, whether their goal is immense wealth, immense power, conquest, revenge, etc, etc. The baddies from the season premieres and finales, as well as Sunset Shimmer and the Sirens, will fall here. Cinch will fall under the middle level of antagonist. There are times where she exhibits some villainous traits and begins to tread into that territory, but at the end of the day, she's still at that middle level. The crooked principal that takes advantage of her students for her own personal gain. Now that, in and of itself, is not a bad thing, but Cinch is a very typical example of this character type. Her role in friendship games is very by the books and she doesn't really come off as a great antagonist, but in order for me to say that, I'd have to provide a better example of this type of character. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Dolores Umbridge, and I can hear all the Harry Potter fans groaning at the mere mention of her name. Here's a brief overview for the folks that don't know about this woman. Originally hired as a Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, Umbridge started out by restricting the curriculum to defensive spells so the students could never bring down the Ministry of Magic, the main government in the wizarding world. She then uses her position in the ministry to work her way up the ranks in Hogwarts, eventually becoming headmistress and firing any teachers that she saw as threats to the ministry, including Dumbledore. She takes advantage of not just one student, but nearly all of them. She used cruel and unusual punishment on students that were wrongfully given detention, used one of the 3 unforgivable curses to extract information from students, and created her own personal army of student enforcers to tighten her grip on the school. This all leads up to a moment of comeuppance where Harry delivers what is arguably his best comeback line.
Do something! Tell them I mean no harm!
I'm sorry, Professor. I must not tell lies.
What are you doing? I am Senior Under-Secretary Dolores Jane Umbridge! Let me go!
Throughout her portrayal in the series, Umbridge pushed the envelope as an antagonist before crossing over into villain territory by the end. She was a character that garnered more fan hate than Voldemort. You know, the main villain of the series? The one that's supposed to be the top dog villain? Voldemort you love to hate. Umbridge you just hate. With that being said, it's hard not to view Cinch as a basic, cliche antagonist when we have a much better use of her character type. Her lack of lasting appeal is also influenced by the story she's in. All of the EQG movies have a standard high school story with an MLP twist, overthrowing the popular girl, the battle of the bands, and the face-off of rival schools. But the latter serves as more of a backdrop to a bigger story that's going on. The movie is more about Sunset and Twilight than it is about the actual games, and while Cinch does have somewhat of an influence on some of the major plot developments, she ultimately comes off as an attempt to place a bad guy into a story that doesn't necessarily need one. Cinch had the potential to be a very memorable antagonist and even villain, but with the safe, typical use of her character combined with friendship games having a more important story going on, she ended up falling flat, and with the way the movie ended, I don't really see any further use for her character. I mean a further use that the series hasn't run into the ground by now. Thanks again to Ultraman Verde for requesting this video. If there's a character that you'd like to see me discuss, or if you want any other cool goodies, swing by my Patreon page and check out the reward tiers. So what do you think of Principal Cinch? Swarm that comment section below or bug me on social media, and consider supporting me through Patreon or PayPal art commissions. Until next time, keep it sketchy, folks.